Good evening and welcome to Science Study Break. We have a little bit of legalese here for you to look at. As you might notice, there is someone in fact recording this program in the back, so smile nicely when you ask a question and you'll look great in the video. We want to thank you all for coming out to Science Study Break, and by we, I mean the army of people that it takes to put on this program and make it so enjoyable. The people from the different libraries across campus who help us out, the folks from University Communications who video record this and then put it up on the web for us, our friends at Science in the Pub who help to publicize our programs, and especially tonight, our presenters, Dr. Jan and Terry Todd from the Stark Center for Physical Culture and Sports. We do this 2 times a semester, twice in the fall, twice in the spring. You've all been handed a feedback form, and we would love to know what you think of the program, and also we'd like to have your ideas for future programs. If you have ideas about TV shows or movies that you'd like to see get a Science Study Break treatment, please tell us on the form. If there are faculty members or researchers that you know of whom you'd like to see become Science Study Break presenters, please give us those suggestions, and we'll try to get those folks in the program. We are also very grateful to our generous supporter, University Federal Credit Union, that makes possible the videos and the snacks, and so give them a nice thank you round of applause. If you're interested in past Science Study Breaks, you can see that we've been doing this for quite a while, since the fall of 2006, and we have an archive that you can go look at. Some of these past Science Study Breaks are out on the UT Austin YouTube channel, so you can go and look at them there, and this one will go out on the YouTube channel in due time as well. You can visit the past Science Study Breaks by just going to UT Austin YouTube channel and searching for Science Study Break. You can also follow us through various social media. We're on Twitter, UTLSL, for UT Life Science Library. We're on Facebook. We're also on Pinterest. There are lots of great UT libraries. Normally at this point there would be a little bit of a promo about the UT libraries, but we have so much good video and so much cool information to hear tonight that all I'm going to say is the libraries are great, use them. So this program tonight is going to look at superheroes and super strength. It's going to have scenes from Batman, The Avengers, Kick-Ass, The Incredible Hulk, and other movies. And some of these scenes are of an adult nature with naughty language and graphic violence. So this program is rated R. We have with us tonight Drs. Jan and Terry Todd of the Stark Center for Physical Culture and Sports, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in tonight's topics, so please everybody help me to welcome the Drs. Todd.
Well, I hope the pizza is good. Maybe I'll have a chance to try some later. I'm Terry Todd. This is Jan Todd. We both have names that work for either gender. It's convenient. And in any case, I began my interest in activity in the activity of strength training, strength competition before Jan did. And I was a student here at UT. I enrolled in Plan 2 a long time ago. I played also on the tennis team. And unusual. Back in those days, football players, leave aside tennis players, football players did not train with weights. I was heavier than all the football players at University of Texas at that time, except one. And I weighed, by the time I got to that, my heaviest weight when I was an undergraduate was about 240. And there was one man who weighed 245. So you can see what a long way we've come since that time. It was forbidden at one time. Everybody thought it would make you muscle-bound. Now it's required because everybody knows if your team doesn't do it, the other teams do, you might as well not show up at the game. So when I got finished with my interest in tennis, I continued to lift weights and built my weight from 240 up to about 340 and was national champion in weightlifting and powerlifting. So I satisfied my curiosity. It whetted my appetite at the same time for knowledge about this activity. How is it that some people can get stronger much easier than others? What could explain this? And so I began to study about it and read everything I could get my hands on. But I retired as an actual competitor when I was in my late 20s, or middle 20s really. I did a little bit of coaching, but then I entered into an academic life and kind of focusing really on my physical activity. My hobby became my profession, you might say. Jen and I met, and she began going to the gym with me. I still trained just for fitness and exercise. And so she began coming along, and she's the one who actually became the famous lifter in our family. So I'll let her explain that.
Thanks. Well, I think it's not so much a matter that I became famous. It's just that I had good timing, and I actually have a couple pictures that I'll show as we go forward here. If I can make this work. And basically, when I married Terry, I was a senior in college, and that's a long time ago. That was in 1973. So I was 21 years old, and because I had come of age in the era before Title IX had passed, I didn't really participate in women's sports in high school. I didn't play basketball on a team. I actually did a little bit of swimming when I was young, like 9th and 10th grade, but I never had the kind of sport experiences that young women have here at the University of Texas and other major NCAA schools all the time. So I didn't really know what competition was about, and so when we started going to the gym, it was like this door opened for me. And so my lifting career actually sort of began as a joke and a sort of a dare. And what had happened was that we had come home. Terry grew up in Austin and come home for Christmas and had gone to the gym to train. And I met a young woman there who was actually competing on a men's powerlifting team. Now, this was in 1973, and at that time there were no women's powerlifting contests. It was just open terrain at that point. And so this girl had competed on the men's team because they needed a lightweight lifter. And so I got to talking about her, and that was interesting. And then as I went home and Terry and I started talking about it some more, he said, well, you know, back at the turn of the century, there were some women who lifted weights. They were in the circuses or in vaudeville. But, you know, it's not done as much now. No reason it shouldn't be. And so we started thinking about that. And one of the things that he had at his house was an old copy of the Guinness Book of World Records. And so my lifting career began sort of like guys in fraternities who want to eat 50 eggs and other kinds of things. It was really kind of a dare, like, could I do this? Could I get in the Guinness Book of World Records? So I trained for about a year, went to a contest, and that's a longer story than we have time for tonight. But basically, I broke a record that had stood since 1926, one of these old strong ladies. So I deadlifted at that meet, 392 pounds. But what interested me about it was the reaction of everybody to the idea that a woman was lifting weights. And it became politicized. It was like, because we were living at that time in Macon, Georgia, and it was like this big event. So over the course of the years, as I continued lifting and what are the barriers for women and what are the barriers of women's strength, really I found this very, very interesting. And so as I moved forward then, because of my timing, then I also somehow attracted a lot of publicity. And so by the time I was done, I was in the Guinness Book of World Records for about, 13 years, something like that. I was in Sports Illustrated and People magazine. I lifted in 5 different bodyweight classes. But one of the things that I found interesting about it was I lifted in competition, and this was the heaviest competitive lift I ever made. But I also found it really interesting to test my strength in other ways. And so I learned, for example, to squat the side of my car. I had a little Ford Fiesta, and I could boost it up off its wheels at that time. So, but what happened with all this for me was, just like Terry, is that I wasn't an academic at this time. I was teaching public school, and for a while I actually had sponsors, and I toured around and gave strength shows. So you can actually find me, I appeared at state fairs. I opened for Bill Cosby one night, which was my chief claim to fame. But eventually it sort of brought me back to the idea that I needed to understand this cultural phenomenon, why it was that people felt that way about strength. So anyway, so then I came back as well to do a PhD. So that's sort of where we started from. And what we want to do now is move forward. And I'm going to let Terry talk now, and he's going to lead us into the clips.
And by the way, some of you, I know we have a lot of very bright students here at UT. You probably figured out that one of my reasons for encouraging Jan when she showed a little interest and talent in this activity, that I looked into the future, and I knew that I would never hear anything I had to pay attention to of the sort honey, would you come and help pick up this dog food?
This is true.
And carry, would you get this bale of hay and feed it to the cattle? No, I knew I was safe from that. And so it wasn't a long and strange trip to watch all this unfold, because she was the pioneer. When she started, there were no women weightlifters, no women powerlifters, no women bodybuilders. It started with powerlifting, and all that publicity she got it opened the doors to all these other women who said, well, I don't know, maybe I might like to try that. Now, of course, just as the men in football train with weights here at UT, we were just down there a little earlier this afternoon at the varsity weight room, and there were a bunch of women's teams there, all of them doing the same exercises as the men are doing. So it's universal now. I want to now show you something that comes from what we've been doing later. And I continue to do some coaching. In fact, there's a picture of a guy who's the last man I ever coached. Some of you probably know who he is. His name is Mark Henry. He's an Austinite. He grew up in East Texas, but he became considered by many people the strongest man in the world. He's certainly the most prodigiously gifted man I've ever seen, and I've pretty much seen all of the ones over the last 50 years or so. And there's a picture of him in this next clip at the very end. But mostly what we've done is we've taught. We've written books and magazine articles and this sort of thing. But we have always had this deep interest in ultimate physical strength, how you attain it, how you test for it, what explains it. And so about 12 years ago, we were asked to run a strongman competition by Arnold Schwarzenegger and his business partner, who actually runs the big weekend called the Arnold Sports Festival. They have 20,000 athletes come to Columbus every March. And one of the, I think, 50 or 45 different sporting activities they have over the 3-day weekend is a strongman competition. And I have to say, even though it's the one that we put on, it seems to be the most popular. It draws the most fans. It's the most important strongman competition going now. We have the biggest prize money, and the very best guys come. They focus on this. They train for it because it has the most prestige. And so I wanted you to see, since this is about extreme strength, what extreme strength really is now. These men are the strongest men in the world.
The Arnold Sports Festival, named after a former governor of California, who was also a barbarian and a school teacher. And at some point before that, he was the most influential bodybuilder ever. Although this festival started as a bodybuilding contest in 1989, it is now, well, a bit more.
Here come the
At
big
the Arnold,
boys.
there are a bunch of folks vying for various titles and medals, from weightlifting to gymnastics to fencing, powerlifting, and of course, the famous pageantry of bodybuilding. If you look around a bit, you'll see quite a few claims that at least hint at being extreme. Extreme dieting and supplement use to achieve an extreme aesthetic may be the most recognized idea of what the Arnold is, but that doesn't interest me. I'm here for a specific reason. These guys. See, I'm interested in strength, real strength, not some proposed illusion of it. And although there are several sports to choose from here that display it, the one I find to be the biggest example of extreme is this.
It's about 1,000 pounds.
Strongman Classic now rivals the bodybuilding contest as the biggest event here, at least in terms of spectators. Former powerlifting champion Jan Todd, who helps run the event with her husband Terry every year, has some insight to its growing popularity.
You know, there's maybe a line from T.S. Eliot about he talks about what he calls the fascination of that which is difficult. I mean, it's obviously physical, but I think it's also an attitude. And I think that the more you're into strength, the more you realize that it allows you to do more things and sort of opens other possibilities for you.
Strength as a spectacle can therefore be strength as inspiration. You can witness that possibility to do more and
That's
be more.
340, not
Be more
240.
for these guys, though, means be a
The
lot
dumbbell weighs
more.
about 250.
The size of the crowd rivals the bodybuilding shows, but the size of the competitors makes this the pound-for-pound largest event here, and possibly anywhere.
That's Mark Henry there on the left.
Can you stop it?
It's okay. He won the contest the very first year we had it, and because he travels so much and he had to ask for 3 months off to train for this one because he hadn't done any lifting for 5-6 years because of his wrestling. But he decided he wanted to see if he still had it, so to speak. So he did lift and he did win. And as I say, he is a prodigy. He's never taken any anabolic drugs of any kind in his whole career. And but he weighed 220 pounds when he was 10 years old. And he can dunk a basketball easily with either hand. And he's actually not really 6'4", he's 6'3". He always likes to say he's 6'4". So this is what I wanted you to see so you'd have an idea of the size and the strength. All of the men who vie for this kind of mythic title, strongest men in the world, they all are, as you can see, they're giants. They're enormous. Our 10 guys average about 6'4" and about 350 pounds. And they go all the way up to that Brian Shaw, who won our contest year before last at 6'8" and 460. And I would want to say also, many people think, well, if he's the strongest man in the world in this sort of thing, he could beat anybody in the world in arm wrestling. It's not true. You can never be the best in all forms of strength competition, especially now because there's more and more specialization. If you really want to be strong, you need to go to Hollywood and get the makeup right and get some good special effects people and some of the kind of breakaway furniture that they use in the WWE. And then, then it's not quite as hard as doing what the other guys have to do. So let's look at a couple of tapes here. I want you to pay attention in this first one to the pants. Pay attention to the pants, okay?
All right. This is from Captain America.
Good. Take off your shirt, your tie, and your hat.
Jeez, somebody get that kid a sandwich.
Give that kid a sandwich. Okay. Got the pants on, right? Okay. Pretty tight, the pants.
Comfortable?
It's a little big.
Sorry. Next time.
Mr. Stark, how are your levels?
Levels at 100%.
Good. Now, Mr. Stark.
There's some Frankenstein references here that you might notice. Where's the light?
Mr. Stark?
Pants still fit. He's 100 pounds heavier. Wait till you see the Hulk.
Son of a bitch did it.
Yeah, yeah. I think we did it. You actually did it.
How do you feel?
It's all right.
You look taller.
Okay, we'll just go right to the next one.
That's all right.
Oh, yes. Well, let me, do you have any questions about this one? Well, the next one is going to be about him also in a little clip. If you have a question about him, we'll wait because we have one more short clip about the captain. Captain doing a workout. Looks pretty average until the very end, when the laws of physics are momentarily suspended.
There's not enough time. I gotta put her in the water.
You won't be alone.
Oh my God. This guy's still alive.
And also lifts that heavy bag pretty easily. If you've ever handled a heavy bag.
Trouble sleeping?
Anyone have any questions about these two clips of Captain America? Yep.
In the clip about Arnold, you said that part of our fascination with strength is because it's difficult, but Captain America just kind of gets his strength from that machine.
Yes, it's true. And that, of course, is what happens in many of these kinds of films. The key is transformation. Transformation occurs, as it did with me. I was 190 pounds, 95 pounds when I was a senior in high school, and then I went up about 150 pounds. I transformed myself in less than 10 years, 150 pounds worth. And not through anabolic steroids or anything, but just through training and eating. Lots of eating, lots of training, and then lots of eating again. And now, with anabolic steroids, you can do the same thing much more quickly. But if you have enough will and you have the right kind of constitution, you can actually transform yourself in ways that you really wouldn't believe. It's almost as magical as some of the things that you see in these clips. There was a man some years ago, he went from 200 pounds, he wanted to play football, he started lifting weights. This was back in the 40s, late 40s and early 50s. He went from 200 to 230, just like that. He said, this is good, I'm going to lift some more. He kept lifting, went to 250. He said, forget about the football, I like this lifting. He went to 400. Then he thought, a little heavy, cannot pay for my food anymore, I'm out of the service now. He got big mostly by having free food. So he then changed his diet completely, changed his exercise program, went to 187, and then back to 225, 226, and he won the Mr. Universe. Now that was before the days of steroids, so we know he took no drugs to do it, and it was about 2.5 years. 200, 400, 187, 225. No stretch marks, unbelievable. So these things are possible, and the drugs make an enormous difference. In these clips, it's magic. Let's see, it's not just, it's sort of gender neutral also, like our names. I want you to
Give me a stop.
watch the car, watch some other laws of physics don't hold true. Oh, gee, girl.
You did it, right?
What the hell are you doing?
Watch how high they go. You've all seen these crash dummies. Is this logical? Notice that she really has to strain to push the car. You can lift and fly with the car, you could just flip it, knock it over. So there we have it. This is a somewhat more extreme than we saw just knocking a heavy bag across the gym, flying with a heavy car, which somehow was indestructible. The car didn't even appear to bend the bumper, from what I could tell. Also, an interesting thing to me, she grabbed the gun and she bent it, but did you notice she actually, I guess maybe the director says, now look like you're working. And so she said to exert effort to do something after she had lifted a 3,000-pound car, flown 400 feet in the air with it.
Ready?
Yep.
Back in. The mouse is actually the easier way.
Now this is it.
At the same one, sorry.
Now, okay, this is Sherlock Holmes. As you know, he's portrayed in the book series and in his films as a man of unusual intellect and as well as physical strength and fighting skills.
Do you?
Yes.
You scoundrel, sir. I've heard of you before. You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
Your conversation really is most entertaining. If you would close the door on your way out, as there is a decided draft.
I will go when I've had my say. Don't you dare to interfere in my affairs. I know that Miss Stoner has been here.
There we are. Bending the fireplace poker. Old strongman stunt.
I'm a dangerous man. We fall foul of you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. Just another client. What a very amiable person. I may not be quite so bulky, but...
Okay. When you bend a bar, you create a leverage by pulling in with your hands this way, and so you can force a bend if you're strong enough to do it. Lifting it back out, there is no way. If you could twist your hands that hard, it would bend the bar right where your hands are. It wouldn't bend it in the middle. You would have to turn the bar over, put the middle across your leg, press it down. So what you just saw is simply not the way the world works.
But it's how movies work.
Oh, movies, yes.
Yes. All right. Try to do
Who do we have here?
Batman.
The Dark Knight. This, I want you to pay close attention. Maybe we're going to try to stop it at one point so you can see what I want you to see. This is an early Batman. I want you to notice his costume, particularly his bulletproof vest, one might call it. Now, the important thing in this that I wanted to point out is that Batman is one of the superheroes who does not have superhuman, God-given, spider-given, electricity-given strength. He has trained in different ways and to make himself unusually physically fit and skilled in hand-to-hand combat, that sort of thing. But the business about lifting this man, there are a lot of scenes of strong men, mean guys, hero guys, lifting a man off the ground, with one hand or two hands. In this case, he used 2 hands. This is not impossible, not impossible. However, the thing that's most interesting is, and you can understand why somebody who doesn't have, Superman's natural armaments would want to have something that would stop a bullet. He's not like G-Girl. So he has a breastplate, like armor, suit of armor. However, it has very delineated pectoral muscles, the rectus abdominis muscles, the classic six-pack is there for anyone to see. Why? I mean, that's not needed. That won't stop the bullets any better. Maybe actually make them a little more dangerous in terms of, ricochets or something. Nonetheless, they want, the Hollywood people, they want the superheroes not only to do superheroic things, but to look superheroic. And that's why these days, leading men in movies, if they're going to play an action role, they cannot look like heroes and leading men of 40, 50, 60 years ago. They would not be allowed to take their shirts off, quite honestly. They really wouldn't. And now, many people will train really hard for a short period of time to rip up, maybe take some anabolic special supplements to do it. But Batman is an interesting, because he's got this. He looks like the guys in 300, what was it called? The 300, where everybody had the same ab structure. Here we are.
All right. Spider-Man. Oops.
You all know the story.
MJ, let's go.
Wait. Thanks.
If you have a spider phobia, you don't particularly like to see that. That just struck like a rattlesnake. Here we have the transformation. He can't see it himself because of his glasses. Wow.
Weird.
Peter,
Yeah?
are you all right?
I'm fine.
Any better this morning? Any change?
Change? Yeah? Big change.
Well, hurry up. You're going to be late.
Right.
Okay. Showing this to you just again so you can see, not showing him doing any of his feats, but was it really necessary for the story to show that he's gotten larger or more muscular, more physically capable looking? Surely he doesn't have the kind of musculature or physiognomy that would allow him to do the things that he can now do. So that has to be from other sources. But why did they necessarily? They did it for the same reason that they put the abs on Batman. It's part of the magic.
Question over here.
Yes? Well, of course, training, systematic progressive resistance is the sort of key to that. But the gifts, just as they do in music, mathematics, you know.
Well, we do know from exercise, let me break in if I can for just a second, from exercise physiology, breaking in, I know.
All right.
It was our deal. We weren't going to break in on each other, and here I am
You were the
breaking
big
in.
star.
All right. Anyway, what I was going to say was that if you've taken any classes in anatomy or physiology, we do know that not everybody's muscle makeup is exactly the same. And the simple version, which is actually no longer the accurate version, is that we have certain percentages of fast twitch fibers and slow twitch fibers. It's actually more complicated than that. But the distribution of that differs from people in people. And so, somebody like a marathon runner is probably by nature more inclined to be good at those kind of events than, say, I might have been, or Terry would have been for certain. That's it.
Yeah, one thing, I mean, to see the kind of distribution of strength, we were just in Spain where we oversaw a strongman competition based on the Arnold format. And it had the best guys in the world. One guy was relatively new to the sport, men in his middle 20s from Poland. He's about 5'11", and he weighed, I think, 140 kilos, 308 pounds, 310, somewhere like that. You wouldn't know it if he walked in here and had street clothes on. You would never think he was that heavy, but he was. But I saw him after the contest was over. They had a basketball court in the big hall where we had the contest, and he took a basketball and stepped under the basket, and with it in both hands, with no running, not a step or anything, he just squatted down and leapt into the air and boom, back over his head, double-handed. He was this far up over the rim, and he's only not quite 6 feet tall. So he had to have a vertical jump close to 40 inches. And a lot of this comes from nature, you know, and there are certainly around the bend, not too far, there's various kinds of genetic manipulation that will be able to be done that will change people's capacity for strength, for endurance, and so on, you know. H.G. Wells wrote a story about this phenomenon. Someone invented a food. Heracles is the Greek name for Hercules. And in the book, it was called Heracleophobia. And it was the food of the gods, the food of Hercules. And when people took it, it made them not only much, much stronger, it made them larger, dramatically larger, like giants. And they had to take it as children. But it was the dramatic foundation of the story. But these kinds of things, I mean, that's H.G. Wells, but now we have human growth hormone. If you take human growth hormone exogenously, you're given it through injections while you're growing. And if you're going to be maybe 6'2", it's absolutely physiologically possible and even likely that it's given by somebody who wants to do it and knows how to do it. You could be 6, 8, or 9, or 10, or 7 feet instead of 6'2". These things are possible now. If any of you ever saw the great Russian Greco-Roman wrestler, Alexander Karelin, who won 3 Olympic Games and would have won 4th, he just had a bad day. But he wasn't beaten for 12 years. People refer to him in the inside of sports as the experiment, because he had a body that allowed him to just barely, by losing weight, get down to 286, which is the upper limit of wrestling in the Olympic Games. And he had all the conditions of acromegaly, which is the condition when you have too much growth hormone in your system. Your jaw gets big, your brow gets big, like the Hulk, you know, or like Andre the Giant. So now we're on the Hulk. We'll see how big really is.
So, keeping with our transformation theme for the first clip here.
Yeah, this shows his transformation. Pay a little bit of attention to the pants. You can't see him very well, but
You have a pants.
I always watch this with great fascination because he gets to be about 8 times the size of a normal big man, and the shirt obviously rips to pieces. Somehow, the pants always fit. Okay, this is the transformation. Now you get to see him a little bit better. He has a fight with...
Right. This is actually from a different film, and
Yeah.
it's a different actor playing him, but it matters little.
Right, different actor.
It's check out the pants. This is from the Avengers last summer.
They're not your enemies, Banner. Try to think.
Get his attention.
Escort 6-0, proceed to Wishbone and engage hostile. Don't get too close.
Don't get too close. That's like don't go down the stairs.
Target acquired. Target engaged.
Okay. Does not pay to mess with the Hulk. One, I think, great thing about the Hulk is that he is so massive that you can almost believe some of these extraordinary things that you see. It's more difficult when you have, someone with a magic hammer. Yes.
So we've seen a lot of these clips, and it seems like people will go from smaller to larger and larger. And I mean, if you look at the GI Joes, they've become larger and larger. I mean, does this represent something broader in society? For instance, maybe something that like John Hoverman proposed, this continual push to go bigger, faster, stronger that we've tried for so long, or do you have other thoughts on that?
No, I think so, and in fact, this is a good time to move into another segment of this presentation. And here you see Hulk, and now you'll see a little bit about what I mentioned earlier and what you have mentioned, having to do with this whole business of transformation, how one thing sometimes drives another. Jen is going to.
All right, and
Take care of this.
you're going to be quiet now, right?
No, I have one butt end.
Okay. Well, let me see if I can speak to Dominic's question first. I think one of the things that we're seeing here with these films, I mean, these are popular. This is a popular culture genre, and the films that we're seeing, of course, come from something else, and what they come from are comic books. And one of the things that to me is very interesting about the whole comic book genre, and one of the reasons I'm interested in it is because, kids of my generation grew up on comic books. We didn't play video games. I didn't watch a lot of television as a kid for this kind of stuff. But there were certain comic book characters that when the comic books came out, you definitely went and bought them. And if we look historically at how comic book characters have evolved, one of the things that's really interesting about them is that if you go back in history, and I'm going to show you some slides in a second, is that they're a lot smaller. They're much more normal looking. And the stunts that they did and the kind of strength they displayed was also quite different. So real quickly, and then we'll kind of come back to your question, Dominic. Let me see if I can get there. I want to sort of just walk you now through the evolution of Superman. So Superman began in the Sunday comics in 1935. And so as you can see in the beginning, he looks like a pretty normal guy. He's athletic looking, he's got his cape on, but you notice there's not any of the sort of hypermuscularity that we
Normal
associate.
except for the cape.
That's your one butt-in.
Okay,
This is your one butt-in. So we have been married 39 years, and we research and write together, so this is an old story. So in 1938, the first Superman comics appeared. And again, if you look at the body here, you see the way he's built. I mean, there's nothing here that's overly dramatic. It's also, however, before anabolic steroids. It's really before any of the kind of sort of big super sports stars that have hypermuscular bodies. And so if we come up into 1955, Superman's maybe got a little bit more muscle. There are by now Mr. America bodybuilding contests happening. There are some men around in the world now who have a little bit more muscle on their body. But in the late 1950s, something happens, and that is when the first anabolic steroid is invented. This is a drug called Dianabol, which comes out in 1958. And it is then picked up by athletes, begun to be used by bodybuilders, and now watch what happens to Superman. And so from 55, when he looks like this, we go to 65, and you can see now he's got much more muscular definition. And if we come into 1974, which is around the time that Arnold is winning the Mr. Olympia contests, and you can notice the very evident six-pack here and the bigger deltoids. And then we come to 1985, and then we come to 1995. So our concept of what a superhero looks like has totally changed. And in fact, they no longer actually they don't do Superman comic books anymore. However, there are animated films that continue to come out, and there's actually a new film that's coming out. I think it's actually next year. And so, but our notion of what our superhero looks like now really is based on what the top male bodybuilders look like. And so if you know anything about bodybuilding, you saw some of those images in the early pictures. If you saw those guys on stage, if you were to put those guys next to sort of the Superman figure, they wouldn't be too far off. So if we take some of the other superheroes, and I'll do this quickly because I know we're getting close on time. If we take Batman, for example, Batman's first appearance in a comic is in 1939. And again, kind of hard to see in here, but you can also see that the body is not the focus here. It's kind of interesting the way they've done the art. It's not the focus of the comic book cover. If we come into 54, again, before anabolic steroids are on the scene, and here's Superman and Batman together on this one. And again, they're athletics guys. Maybe they look like they played a little football, but they don't look like the big superheroes that we're seeing now. But let's go to 2007. And in fact, if you're interested in this, there is a paper I've written about some of this, but there's also a guy at Harvard University named Harrison Pope, who has been doing this interesting work that somebody mentioned earlier, maybe it was Ben, about the action figures. And what Dr. Pope has done is he has taken the toys that children play with, like G.I. Joe dolls and Batman figures, especially young males, and he's actually sort of extrapolated from them what their measurements would be if they were a man of 6 feet tall. And so the Batman doll, which is being sold here by DC Direct, would be, as you can see here, 57 inches in the chest, 30 in the waist, but with a 27-inch arm. There are no 27-inch arms in the world, except maybe for that guy, if you've ever seen him on YouTube, who has the exploding arms. And that, we don't even want to go there. So anyway, it is fascinating. But one of the things that's happened, of course, in film, and we didn't do tonight any of the old clips from like the original Superman TV show where there was this actually very soft-bodied looking guy who played Superman, and he did hardly anything except fly. That was the big trick, is that as the bodies have gotten larger and more extravagant, so have the stunts. And so, in fact, there's a wonderful animated piece, and we didn't bring it because it was animated, but Superman, and it shows him lifting 1 quintillion tons, which is like, you know, the heaviest thing known, not just in the world, but in the entire universe. But of course, it's animated. So anyway, I think we'll stop with that and take a few questions. We had a couple other video clips, which we'll do another time. So, all right. Anybody have questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
You talked for a moment about some genetic research being done and about drugs that can be used to stimulate muscle growth in humans. Are there any legal obstacles or barriers that have to be overcome to do that sort of research?
Yeah, basic human subjects research permission is the big one. I mean, truthfully, anabolic steroids have been around since the late 1950s, and they continue to be created, and there's a wide variety of drugs, and as Terry mentioned earlier, it's not just anabolic steroids, which are the testosterone-based substances, but there's also human growth hormone, and there are other kinds of products that people use, including things that are sort of insulin-related that bodybuilders and other strength athletes use to enhance themselves for performance. But the way we do science in universities, for example, is if I wanted to create a research study and say I want to sort of test the effects of 100 milligrams of Dianabol on 50 men over a 6-month period, I would have a really hard time getting permission to do that research. And that's really been one of the big stumbling blocks. One of the interesting things that is going on now, and if you want to sort of look into the future, there is an exercise scientist, physiologist I should say, named Lee Sweeney, who is working at the University of Pennsylvania. And Lee Sweeney is the leading researcher in the world looking at the use of what we're calling genetic engineering. He's actually doing DNA work, has isolated some of the genetic material that we actually connect to building more muscle mass. Now, his interest in this is primarily through muscular dystrophy, because his mother had muscular dystrophy. However, before the 2012 Olympic Games, and if you look in the literature at all, there are athletes buzzing all over the world about the idea that we may be able to selectively choose the genes that would allow us to build more muscle mass and then manipulate ourselves so that we wouldn't have to use anabolic drugs. We could do this genetically. Is that happening right now? No. Is it possible that in your lifetime you're going to see that? Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. And if that happens, of course, you might as well forget about drug testing, because just like you'd have to forget about drug testing for human growth hormone, if you use the growth hormone when the boy or girl is a teenager, so that by the time professional basketball is being played, or football, that huge bone structure and height, body mass has been created already. And you just maintain it through exercise. You don't have to take any more human growth hormone. It's certainly not reachable by the laboratory at that point.
Other questions? Oh, now we have lots of questions. Good.
Size seems to make, you don't need magic. You need a bigger guy with bigger muscles. Well, millions of years ago, we had big dinosaurs. How come we don't have big animals like that running around now? Anything change?
Well, one of the things that happens to these great big guys who do dominate the strongman events and dominate the interior line of the National Football League is that they don't live too much longer than the dinosaurs did. I mean, relative to other dinosaurs, the great big ones, they came and they went. And the average age of death of the NFL lineman is just over 50 years. Yeah. Whereas gradually lifespan has increased in the U.S. Since the 1930s. And in the 1930s, I think it's about the first time they started doing this kind of testing with the NFL. And at that time, the average NFL player on average lived longer than the average man in the U.S. Now, it's over 20 years apart. And these men that weigh 400 pounds, that's why quite honestly, I'm worried about Mark Henry, because he's 41 now, and he still weighs 400 pounds. It's part of his, you might say, makeup for the World Wrestling Entertainment, but he understands he needs to drop back. He's never going to be 200 pounds. You'd have to get the chainsaw out for that.
I think one other thing, though, just and this is sort of, again, like what's in our future. The same genetic engineering that these athletes are sort of interested in have actually been being used in the cattle industry for some time now. And there's sort of there's interest there in the idea that we could start creating meat animals that would grow more quickly and have more muscle mass. There actually is a breed of cattle that are called Belgian blue cattle. I don't know if any of you have ever seen any of those, but they have a natural genetic mutation that allows them to have what we call double muscles. And there are geneticists now who are very interested in that and are experimenting with other cattle. And I can't get into the pictures, but when you go home, look up double muscle cattle.
Or greyhounds. They've been doing it some with greyhounds.
Well, no, it was a freak.
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
No, they've. It's the oddest thing, to see these. I mean, they have the slender face. They're meant to be, racers, and yet they've got these massive muscles. Yeah. It's extraordinary. These kinds of things are possible, and I think a lot of it's being done, and we don't know about it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let me repeat her question if I can, because it's hard to hear in here. She said that, when we think about strength, that for a lot of us it has sort of we have mythic memories of people like Hercules, and it's part of our mythology. And then the further question that she asked, that was her comment, was about why we're so fascinated by it. What is it about it that fascinates us so much? So that's kind of the essence of your question. Okay, well, I mean, one of the things that continues even to drive what we saw here is think about Thor, for example. Thor's a god. And if we go back to ancient times, we always sort of imbued our gods and goddesses with the idea that they had special powers. So, if we look at him in a film and we sort of lose a lot of that idea. If you actually saw the movie Thor, I don't know if any of you guys actually see Thor? I loved Thor. Okay. Anyway, but if you saw the real Thor, then you get that whole sort of sense about how he is part of this family and there are other gods and goddesses, and so you get all that. But I think what happens is that, there's a lot of answers. One is that we live in an industrialized society and we're cut off from our agrarian roots, and we don't really understand anymore much about hard work, but yet for some reason the idea of being strong remains a sort of curiosity for us. But I do think it's also kind of special. And I think that specialness for me, as somebody who is interested in strength and who practices strength and still tries to be somewhat strong, has to do with the fact that we do feel like the person who is strong probably has other kinds of abilities as well. Because, we sort of, we tend to think about giants and people like that as having sort of more than one capacity. I don't know.
Well, it's unquestionably true. When you saw those clips from the Arnold strongman contest, did you see the enormous crowds? That's 5,000 or 6,000 or 7,000 people crowded around. When they start doing their competition, it's an enormous expo hall. People by the tens of thousands come in. It all stops. It's like concrete that locks up and people don't move. They're fascinated by these guys. They are so enormous, and they're moving. They're doing things. It's kind of exciting and it's out of the ordinary, even for people who've seen great big football players. 6'8", 460, and so there's something there. But I do believe it's ancient. There's no usefulness in this. In fact, these people are not healthy, but sports in general, they're not about health. The playwright Brecht said some years ago that good health ends where elite sport begins. That's true.
We'll take one more question, and then we have to sort of vacate the space here. So I don't know who's got the best question. I think the guy in the orange shirt does. He has a book shirt on, so that's good. That's a hooked on Texas. Yeah.
So, do y'all have a theory for why we're so fascinated with strength and why everything seems to get bigger in your examples? And in terms of, just this absolute pursuit of strength, even as strength becomes less and less utilitarian?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a reason why people get bigger and bigger. It's because in order to lift these bigger and bigger weights, you have to get bigger. When Mark won that first contest, he was the only person who weighed 400 pounds. There were one or two people under 300 pounds. As the years have gone by, people have gotten bigger and bigger, and I'm the one who decides what they do. I decide the challenges, and I keep adding weight and adding weight and adding weight, and they keep getting stronger. And I'll notice that every year they seem a little bit bigger. And so, but they win about $75,000, $80,000 and a new car for winning that contest, plus, within a narrow field, kind of worldwide notoriety. So that answers the one question as to why we care, why an average person would care. The average person, I really don't think they do, because they don't follow the sport. They don't go to the magazine bookstore and buy magazines about strongman. Bodybuilding magazines sell a lot, though, and that's mostly to young men who want to be, maybe not necessarily be stronger, but to look stronger.
Yeah, and I think if I could pick up on that point, because I think what a lot of this is really about is fantasy. It's like Peter Potter there, who's turning into Spider-Man, and all of a sudden he realizes that, but wait, I can now have muscles. I won't be the little wimpy guy anymore. And so I think when we watch like the superheroes that we saw in the films, or if it's even the big guys on the stage, it's that they fuel our imagination and our dreams. And so it's not all, for me, one of the things that was kind of interesting about the invitation to do this that Roxanne brought to us was to think about, Terry and I know the real world of strength quite well, but thinking about it in terms of what the meaning is of the fantasy stuff was kind of fun for us. So anyway, I thank you all for coming. We both thank you.
Yeah, and if you have any questions
we'll hang around
beyond
for a few
this, we'll
minutes.
stick around here for a while.
Yeah.